Well, we're sure glad that you're here today. Mr. Arakawa and the whole executive management staff felt it very important that all the employees as part of a team here get a chance to see as much information as possible and as much about the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo GameCube as absolutely possible as early as possible. So that's why we're here today. I have a little disclaimer, a couple of administrative details to contend with. Please realize that the information that you're hearing today is confidential and is intended for Nintendo employees only. While we really want you to share your enthusiasm and excitement about these products and about Nintendo's future, we want to make sure that you please do not share any of the specific details that we are giving you today with anyone outside of Nintendo. We also said in our email that there would be Q&A. But when we finished developing our presentations, we realized that we are really giving you every bit of information that we can at this time. And so there really wasn't any room to be able to answer any additional questions. So that being said, we'd like you to refrain from asking questions, but please do not refrain from showing your enthusiasm over what we're sharing. I don't think you will at all be disappointed about the quantity of information that we're sharing today. You are hearing it all and seeing it all, and will be very excited, I'm sure. Let me start with Game Boy Advance. Game Boy Advance, like Game Boy, is going to be the cornerstone product for us. Not many people realize this, but 20 cents of every dollar that's spent in the video game industry goes towards the handheld systems. And we have like 99.9% market share of handhelds, so you know where those 20 cents are going on every dollar. 50% of our business is based on Game Boy. And you can bet that we have a whole lot of high hopes placed on Game Boy Advance, and we will not be disappointed, and I'm sure that you will not be either when you see what we have in store today. With us today, we have Steve Okamoto, there he is, and his development team. And Steve works with second and third party software developers for the Game Boy Advance. He is a software manager with a product support group of the PA&D group here at Nintendo. He also is the one who put on the Game Boy Advance Developers Conference that happened in last April. He has lived and breathed the Game Boy Advance. He knows everything there is to know about it, and I'm going to turn it over to him to tell you all those details. We also have 10 units that we will be handing around, so everyone will get a chance to play the system before they leave today.
Thank you, Shelley. I think she was exaggerating a little bit when she said I lived and breathed Game Boy Advance, but I do keep one in my pocket here, nice close to my heart, so it shows how much respect I have for this new hardware platform for Nintendo. Initial impressions are it's very small, probably smaller than you pictured, fits in your hand. It has the 2 A and B buttons, as well as 2 trigger buttons on the top, so there's additional control features available. Probably also notice the size of the screen. It's quite a bit larger than Game Boy Color, and compared to the rest of the unit, it actually makes up a large part of the whole screen, of the whole unit itself. The screen is 240 pixels by 160 pixels, so that gives you a good idea of the resolution. Resolution is like the detail that you can see on the screen. This is almost what you could see on a television set, so you could probably do pretty well, imagining a Super Nintendo in your hand. And I say Super Nintendo because there's a lot of features that are common to Super Nintendo that we've enhanced and supercharged and put into the system. It's primarily a 2D system, meaning we have a background and we have objects scrolling in front of it. So that's typical what you've known for years with Legend of Zelda or Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario World. These are all the 2D based games. That's what this machine is really tailored towards. When I compare it to Super Nintendo, that's only kind of a starting point, because the CPU within here is much more powerful than Super Nintendo. This has a 32-bit RISC processor. It's customized. There's also its customized processor. The clock speed is 16 megahertz. Now, if anyone knows Super Nintendo, that was maybe 2 megahertz, 3 megahertz, depending on the mode. So this has got a 16 megahertz processor, 4 times the processing power of Super Nintendo, at least. This might even approach like a Sega Saturn or something like that. So there's quite a bit of power in this machine. The screen itself, there are 2 different modes for the screen. One would be the 2D sprite mode that we mentioned. So in this you can have 16 colors with 16 palettes, which comes up to 256 colors in the normal gameplay mode. Compare that with Game Boy Color, you can get maybe 56 colors, or if you did some special palette tricks, you could do a little bit more than 56 colors. We've got 256 possible on Game Boy Advance. It's got a special mode where instead of being in the gameplay mode, you can go into a kind of a full motion video mode. What this does is it draws data into the screen 60 times a second. At this point, you can update it so it looks as if it were animating. So a lot of times you'll see like an AVI file on Windows. You can do like a little movie playback. You can do the equivalent of that on this screen, full screen at 60 hertz, or at 20 hertz, let's say, 20 times a second. So if you can imagine a small movie playing within your Game Boy Advance, I mean, that's the potential that we have here. Part of the problem, though, is it's going to take a lot of space to store all that data. Because it's a movie, it can compress a little bit, but the data has to be basically drawn to the screen every 60 times a second. So that's going to require a large cartridge. Now at first you may wonder, well, look how small this cartridge is. How are you going to fit all that data into this tiny little cartridge? The cartridges themselves support up to 64 megabits of data. 64 megabits is the same size as Mario 64. There's also a cartridge size for 32 megabits. That's the equivalent of Donkey Kong Country on the cartridge. So the smallest game for Game Boy Advance will be the size of Donkey Kong Country in terms of the data. The ROM processing that we've built into the cartridge allows us to have a smaller framework, but then the memory capacity is also increased. It's always like the trend in computers. It's getting smaller and faster. So this is just another example of that. And you may wonder, what happens if you put a Game Boy Color cartridge in there? Well, it plugs into the slot. And of course, it plays all the Game Boy Color titles in Game Boy software as well. So we've got well over 1,000 titles available that will play right off the bat on Game Boy Advance. There's also a special mode where if you hold the trigger button, it expands this game to full screen. It's kind of a special trick you can do with the display. So the images may not look quite normal, but you can get a full screen display if you wanted to. So at this point, we've shown the cartridge, we've shown the unit. I'll talk a little bit more about what's inside. We've increased the sound capability of this machine. For Game Boy Color, we had basically 4 channels. And these channels could create the beeps and the squeaks and the little sound effects that you'd hear for Game Boy Color music. So we've started with that, and then we've added 2 digital PCM channels into Game Boy Advance. What this will allow you to do is in software, take a musical composition with, let's say, 12 instruments, you can combine them together digitally and play them back through this speaker. So you've got 12 different instruments plus the 4 original ones from Game Boy Color. So you've actually got quite a bit of flexibility for music on this machine. Again, comparisons would be like for Super Nintendo, there were like typically 8 voices. So again, the music on this machine can be more rich than was possible on our home console, like our flagship, like 6 years ago. That's how technology has progressed. The other thing we should talk about would be serial communication. That's linking this device to something else. We have a serial communication port on the top of the unit. There will be cables that will connect this to another Game Boy Advance. Later today, we'll have demos of a 4-player Game Boy Advance game using a special cable. So once you start linking Game Boy Advances together, people start to wonder, well, what else can we do? And as they alluded to in the video footage there, we can use this to link to Nintendo 64. Nintendo 64's controller port is actually a serial port, so you could send data back and forth from your Nintendo 64. Because we're forward-thinking engineers, we're planning for the future. We've also got this capability for GameCube. So as they pictured on there, you could link, using a special cable, your GameCube game console to your portable Game Boy Advance. This can be used to have a private screen so that if you're calling a football play, your opponent doesn't know what play you're selecting and spoiling all the fun. So you could use it as an auxiliary display, or you could maybe even use it as a controller so that this screen becomes part of the integral game on the GameCube. Things you might want to consider is this is vastly different than the GameCube controller, which MTD guys will show later. So designers are going to have to keep in mind what features are necessary and how to transition from using a GameCube controller versus a Game Boy Advance as a controller. But the link connectivity is going to be a big feature for this. It's programmable, so there are ways to connect other serial devices pretty easily. That's things we'll be working on in the future. The other thing I wanted to mention about this system is because it's portable, we need batteries. So in the back we've got 2 AA batteries, which is expected to provide 15 hours of useful gameplay time. That's pretty decent. But we've also been very conscious about battery power. One of the things they've implemented in the hardware is, of course, you've got the little green LED showing that your unit's powered on. But as your batteries drain, this is going to turn to red. There's going to be a certain point where it turns red. This is information to the player knowing that he's going to have to replace his batteries relatively soon. Gives him enough time to go buy them or plug it into the wall to charge it up. So it's just another feature that says, okay, batteries are important. You need to change your battery. The other thing that's possible is to turn off certain components that aren't needed at the time. This was possible with Game Boy Color. You weren't always using the CPU. Sometimes you would actually shut the CPU down and wait until it was time for the CPU to wake up. This conserved power. We've taken that a step further with Game Boy Advance. We can also shut down basically the whole system. So let's say you're playing your role-play game and you didn't have time to save it and someone called you away, the phone rang or something. You put the unit down. If it were Game Boy Color, the batteries would continue to drain the unit, possibly losing your game. But there are ways in the hardware where the programmer can put the machine into a stop mode. It's more likely a sleep mode. So the sleep mode would basically shut down the CPU, would actually turn off the screen, which is like the biggest consumption of battery power, and basically go into a halt mode, waiting until the player picked it up. So if I realize that I left my Game Boy Advance running, I go to the table, pick it up. Once I hit the button, it tells the CPU that it's time to wake up, tells the screen time to turn on, and it refreshes the memory that had been saved up until then, so you haven't really lost anything. We think this will be a great feature for game developers to take advantage of because it's built into the hardware, and it's a ways to conserve your battery power. Okay, I think at this point I'll stop talking, and we'll show some demos. This is Steve Rabin. He's a software engineer in the cave. He typically does developer support for GameCube, but he's also a pretty good F-Zero player. So we have recruited him to do some demos for gameplay. So we have all the cars available. In this one, there's the first track only. So at this time, Melody Morgan will be passing out some Game Boy Advances. Give you a chance to try it hands-on. We ask that you not remove the cartridge because they're fastened in there. But other than that, get a feel for the game and pass it on to your neighbor. We want to give everyone a chance to play the system. On the main screen, you can see the rotation and scaling going on in the system. As I mentioned, that's one of the specialties that we have in the hardware, is the ability to scale and rotate various backgrounds. You've probably heard of this as Mode 7 in Super Nintendo, but we've taken it a step further, allowing us to rotate and scale the objects itself. So the object would be like the car in the field. We could actually scroll and rotate that to give it, more depth and complexity. Some of the other features of the hardware would be that you can display 128 objects on the screen, an object being, let's say, the race car. So contrast with Game Boy Color, we could do 40 different objects. So if you can picture 128 different objects, you can show how much more complex and mature the games can be. If you look in the horizon, you can kind of see a whitish tinge. That's actually done intentionally. Steve just wiped out. There you go. So I'll get back to that feature in a moment. So a feature that we can do in Game Boy Advance is have transparency. And if you watch the title screen, you'll see the text come in. You can actually see through the text. So you can do this on computers using lots of CPU power, but this is built into the hardware. It's one of the few hardware platforms, or portable platforms, that can allow you to do transparent objects in front of other objects. I guess another thing you should keep in mind is we're using special development hardware to display it on a television screen. The pixels on a television are going to be a lot larger, so it may look a little pixelated on there, but trust me, on the real screen itself, it's going to be very finely detailed. It's amazing the difference you'll see. So you can see they're using the digital PCM channels to do the little Yoshi voice. So at this point, if we can get 4 volunteers, people that are good Mario Kart players, we'll have them talk to Mr. Kuribayashi. This is using a special link cable which allows you to do up to 4 players.
Nintendo GameCube has gotten a whole lot of positive press since Space World a few weeks ago, and I hope you've all had a chance to sign on Nintendo.com to see the pictures that were sent live simulcast type way to here so that we could post them on the internet site for all of you to see. We have with us today the Nintendo Technology Development Team, and that's NTD. NTD has spent the last 3.5 years developing Nintendo GameCube. They're the ones who have driven the design of the system and the controller that you're seeing today. Not only that, they worked with all of our technology partners around the world, including the research division at NCL. And their focus and goal was to make sure that the GameCube was the ultimate gaming machine when it came out. And I think that when you see the demos today, you're going to see they actually achieved that result. This group is also the group who codes all the libraries, or basically the development kit, that goes out to our developers. So what these guys are doing now that kind of GameCube is out in terms of the public's knowledge of it, they're working on developing and fine-tuning those development kits, as well as kind of looking towards the future. If you can believe it, they're already starting to work on our next generation system. So these are really the brains behind Nintendo here. We have with us the software engineers from NTD, and we have John, who's going to do the presentation today, and next to him, Tien, over here, and what was your, Mike? Mike, over here, and I think Eugene. Oh, there's a new person. I haven't met you yet today. All right, welcome. That's right. So I'm going to turn over the mic to them, and they're going to show off Nintendo GameCube for you.
Great, thanks, Shelley. So as Shelly said, my name's John Cho, and I'm a software engineer over at NTD. And over here is Tian Lim, another software engineer, and he's helping me run side on these demos, so thank him as well. I know that also Mike over there is an artist at NTD, and behind him is Carl, who's in charge of the graphics at NTD. So even though we're in the corner of the building, I know we're super psyched about the GameCube, and you know, we're kind of obscure, but you know, we want to see some of your enthusiasm because you know we're sort of isolated. So are you guys excited to be the privileged few to see this GameCube finally? All right, cool. So I know that we learned a lot of lessons from N64. I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking of the whole team. And there was a lot of lessons to be learned from N64. And one of the ways that our team kind of fostered and helped try to fix that problem was to talk to a lot of developers and a lot of technology partners and try to work with them. One of the goals of the system being that the GameCube is going to be very easy to develop for. And we know that with history, that history shows us that the success of a console is not just based on the technical merits, but based on the efforts of everyone, right, including marketing, PR, developer support, you know, customer service, everyone. So, you know, we're going to see where the GameCube goes. I know we're really excited on the technical end, but hopefully you guys will all chip in a little bit to see the success of GameCube in the future. So, with that, let's show us. We're going to show you the first demo. Oh, the plastic. The plastic. I show you the plastic. You guys are excited to see the plastic. Okay. So, right here in my hand is the GameCube. And this here is the prototype, and it's not actually real working hardware, but everything, all the components in here, are in here that are necessary to make the GameCube. So the weight of the system, this is about what it's going to feel like in terms of weight. You know, you can see that it actually functions, it actually opens. Being a prototype, the open button is a little sticky. A couple of things need to be worked out here and there. You'll also see that inside is the media. It's like the 3 centimeter, I guess, DVD technology. And I'll go ahead and pass this around. But the great thing about having this proprietary media is that it prevents a lot of piracy. So that's one of the reasons why I went with this. Here you go. Pass that around. OK. So the GameCube, you can see that has four controller ports, 2 expansion slots, digicard slots here in the front. And in the back, you can see it has a digital output for Japan and analog outputs. And on the bottom, you'll see that there are a bunch of expansion slots. One being for the modem, and the other one being a high-speed port, and another serial port, which is still kind of to be determined. But anyways, you can kind of get a feel for the system by kind of passing it around, taking a look at it. But please note that everything you see here is not finalized, and it's not going to be finalized until you actually see it on the shelf. So things are actually still subject to change. Okay. What I hold in my hand here is another industrial prototype of the controller, and you'll see that, you know, it kind of looks odd in the beginning, but you can get a really good feel for how it actually feels in your hand and whatnot. But I know Mr. Miyamoto, when he designed this controller, wanted a controller with one analog stick and 1 button. But you know, fortunately, you don't play games with just 1 stick and 1 button. So fortunately, we convinced him to add a little more. So you can see that there's an analog stick here that's well positioned with your thumb, very large, very comfortable, very easy compared to the N64. You see that there's a very large A button here in the middle, and it's also very easy to hit the other buttons surrounding the A button here. So there's no confusion about which buttons you hit, and it's very easy to hit them at the same time. So it's easy to do combos or whatnot. On here, you'll see that there's a camera stick button, another sub-analog stick, a directional pad, and on the top, you'll see a digital Z trigger. It's on the right side, and on these 2 here are the shoulder buttons. And this is a mock-up with foam inside. It doesn't actually work, but here's a working prototype, and you can see how much the triggers travel. And that's going to be nice for racing games, for acceleration, braking, whatnot. So you can get a feel for that as well. Okay. So this is a mock-up of the controller. Now, one of the things, it's just a prototype, as I said before, so there's still things to be worked out, such as the length of the handles. It might feel a little weird in American hands because we have a lot bigger hands than Asians do. So I think that's kind of a prototype, but we're still trying to work out the details in terms of exactly how it's going to feel, how exactly it's going to look. Okay? All right. So finally, let's move on to demos and see one of the demos that we actually did here over at NTD. The purpose of this demo was actually to try to make a Japanese game developer, actually starting with N, to be very jealous and very jealous about our console and to want to develop for it very badly. So we're going to show you the car demo here. Is it running? All right. And you'll notice that looks very nice. The audio that you hear is real audio from the GameCube, from the system here. So you'll notice that there's a lot of detail in these cars here. And I'll point that out by showing you some of the details here. You can see the Ferrari horse on the back of the car, exhaust pipes, Ferrari on the front, Ferrari logo you can actually see and read if you zoom up in here. See it pretty nicely. I think these cars have brake pads, nicely molded rims, thanks to Mike. There's also stick shift, steering wheel, pedals, an engine in here, fully modeled engine. So it's a very nice looking car. Okay. But that's not the only car we decided to model at NTD. We also have a Formula One race car. And the nice thing about this model is that we can actually see some of the detail. If we come up close, some of the detail in the textures. And so a lot of the N64 blurriness of textures is gone with the GameCube. You can move up and you can see some of these textures in here. So it looks very nice. Okay. And another model that we had, decided to add some American muscle in here, is a Dodge Viper. And again, we had so much polygons to spare that we decided to put a spare tire in the back. Right? You can see the chrome, the reflection, whatnot. The interior is nicely well done, thanks to Mike. So we showed this to Miyamoto for the Space World demos, and he said, okay, that's all nice, and you can show one car, and that's great. But for a racing game, you don't just race one car, right? You race against competitors and other cars. So we decided to actually put more cars in than those 3 that you've seen. So put 3 in at the same time. They all look just and good, very nice. 3 is nice, but I think a racing game has a little more, so we could probably put 5 up at the same time. Well, going for 5, probably doesn't, we could probably do more than 5, so we can probably do 8. Show you some more cars here. And since we just had some more performance kicking around, we decided to add up a little more and had 12 up here. So that really shows you the power of the GameCube and how well it can look. So how good does the GameCube look compared to some of the consoles out there? We decided to take a demo reel of the PlayStation 2, Ridge Racer 5, and compare that against what we have at GameCube here. So let's slow the rotation down a bit. Thanks. All right. So I think immediately you guys can see the differences here. I think one of the things that pops out the most, I'm not sure if you guys in the back can see it, but on the hood, or the lettering on top of the hood is very jaggy, very shimmery, very flickery, and it's kind of very disturbing to the eye. You can see the stair stepping, the aliasing going on there, and it's just sort of hideous to look at. I mean, it's nice, but you kind of when you actually put the pictures side by side, you can see the quality differences and the things that you guys can really nitpick at. And it's not like we actually chose the best looking car in Ridge Racer 5, so the smoothest one. So that's PlayStation 2, and I think really when you put it up side by side, it really speaks for itself. So let me show you the model of the Formula One Racer, and you can see this one has a lot more texture definition than the Ferrari, but you can see that the textures, the lettering on here, they don't flicker, they don't shimmer. And you have full scene anti-aliasing here, and it looks very smooth, all at 60 frames per second. So I think really this demo shows a lot about the power of GameCube. Cool. Okay, so that's the car demo that we did over at NTD, and actually was done by one programmer, one artist, and done in a couple weeks. That actually probably could have been done in about a week. So GameCube is actually very easy to develop for. And another testament to that is a Rebirth demo that we have. The Rebirth demo is done by Mixcore, a group of programmers and artists in Osaka, Japan. And you might have seen some of the still shots on the web, but this is all running in real time here. You can see Woody here. This is all actually a full motion video sequence that was ported to the GameCube real time. So this is running real time and not on a full motion video. You can see the texture definition, see the See the wood here. You can just see the leaves in the background. The amount of detail, you can see the individual strands of grass. That's all geometry. This is all geometry out here. So there's an extremely large amount of detail, and you'll see that in all of our demos. So Mixcore did a really great job, but I think the most outstanding thing about this demo is it looks great, but you know what? It was actually done in 2 days. The port was done in 2 days by NCL's GameCube team. So it's really another testament to the fact that GameCube is really easy to design for, as opposed to in 64. So there are a lot of lessons learned and a lot of lessons that we hope will help us to be more competitive in the future. So we have another cutscene, cutscene 2, and you can see some more detail here as well. Yeah, you can just see the geometry. Yep, the fog here is actually used not to hide geometry, but for effect. So you can see all the leaves are in the back are modeled very nicely. The squirrel is soft-skinned. So there's a crap load of textures here that I don't think another console might be able to accomplish. But this is actually done in real time. A lot of people confuse this and say, oh my God, it looks like a full motion video, but it's running right here. So it's kind of cool that you guys are the select few to be able to see some of these things right here. So, okay, that's great. Okay, the next thing we're going to show you is actually a full motion video clip from Silicon Knights, which is actually a second party to Nintendo. And because the GameCube is now on a disc system and as opposed to a cartridge system, we can actually be able to have full motion video sequences with good audio and good visual video. So we're going to show you a clip that shows you the capabilities that GameCube can do in that kind of area. So this is a clip from 2 Human.
We are graced by the presence of Proteus Psi. His contribution and sacrifice will exceed the forefathers. There is much to consider.
Hopefully it won't take too long. But okay. All right. So we have only 2 more demos for you left, but these are kind of like the grand finale, and they're done by Factor 5. And I'm just going to say a disclaimer in the sense that what you're about to see doesn't mean that it's actually a game in the works. It's just a demo, and you guys should just take it as that. It's just a demo. Okay. So let's go ahead and dim the lights. We'll go and run it through one time, and then we'll run it a second time with some comments. So.
10, red 10 standing by. Red 7 standing by. Red 3 standing by. Red 6 standing by. Red 9 standing by. Red 2 standing by. Red 11 standing by. Red 5 standing by. Log in for the attack position.
Okay, what do you guys think? Come on, see it more. Okay, we're going to run through this clip one more time with some comments, and you guys are going to be really impressed by what you see with some comments. The first thing you guys should note is that the X-Wing that you see in the center of the screen when it pans out to it is that model is actually the real Industrial Light and Magic model used in the Star Wars, the Saga Continues, the Return. What's it? The special edition. Okay, there we go. So it's actually the real X-Wing used in the special edition, and it was just plopped right into the GameCube, and no problem, just easy to port, easy to render. So that's a really big testament to that. The audio that you heard is just audio that is being produced by GameCube. Everything that you hear, the surround that you hear is all GameCube. So I think we're gonna have really high quality audio as well on here. The next scene with the TIE fighters, that's about 70 TIE fighters coming right at you. Again, there's just so much to see on the GameCube. Let me go ahead and run it through one more time. I think this clip was done by one programmer and 5 artists. The first X-Wing took 2 days to put up onto the screen, and the rest just took like a week. So again, the whole point of this, as opposed to PS2, is that it's very easy to develop for, and we're catering this machine to developers. Okay, notice the pilot and the R2-D2 model. You guys know the Raven model from the Xbox demos? It's the girl doing some karate demos. If you've seen her, this pilot inside this X-Wing has more polygons. It's about 4,900 polygons than the Raven. So I think that's always kind of a nice gratuitous use of polygons to see on the GameCube. But I think Factory 5 did a nice job on this demo. Okay, the next one again was brought up very quickly on GameCube. There you go. Just grab it here. And run around, shoot things. There's I think how many TIE fighters? There are 75 TIE fighters in the scene running around. Yeah. Yeah, you can shoot the towers, you can shoot the TIE fighters. There's also some X-Wings and A-Wings, Y-Wings in the scene to help you out. So this is all done with dynamic lighting, all done very quickly. This is probably the worst thing you'll ever see, but this was it's okay if you run it there. But this demo was done in a week, so that's about the worst quality you'll ever see. If the programmers worked on this for a little longer, they can definitely polish it up a lot more. So.